Welcome to the Wholeness in Motion Foundation video series. And this is the 7th session, and it's really a part B to the last video that was on adaptation, our adapting system, how we are an adaptable system in relation to movement and skeletal muscular function in some ways. And today we're looking at that same ability, how we are an adapting system, and how that is really what learning is. And so I like this field of how learning works and how we adapt. You could have an entire library of information about that. So this is just the thematic of it. So let's go back to playing with a ball for a minute. So if I have a ball and I want to get it into a basket, in through a hoop, and I don't know how to do it, so then I'm actually learning to succeed at pulling the ball into the basket. And if we just break down the mechanism of learning, I have to have something I want to do. In terms of skill, learning a skill. So I throw the ball and my system picks up whether I get it in the basket or not, where it is. So it's detecting the error. And it's that detecting, and I just keep the kid, you see the kid in your yard working on a hoop, they're just constantly throwing that ball, detecting errors, not necessarily even consciously, not saying it's 2 inches to the right, and so now I'm going to aim. But that's what the other than conscious does. When I know I want something, the system is picking up the error feedback, and then my system, the nervous system, and I think other layers of it are adjusting. So at the beginning, there are all these neural network connections possible. And over time, it's like options prune away until I've got a pretty clean neural network to give me more consistency of that task. It's like the pathway gets very clear about time and space and force. Just think of the myriads of learning your system is doing to get that skill. So and the neuroscience folks call this that plasticity, that our neural networks, our nervous system is constantly shifting and adapting, learning from how we go about and live life. And this is a broad spectrum, because sometimes things get learned incredibly fast, when there's a trauma, and sometimes in terms of how I memorize things, if I've scaffolded a song and I've got connection to meaning and there's emotion and feeling, I'm more likely to remember it. There are many, many, many conditions that make learning, remembering, carving these neural nets easier and stronger, or just something that falls away. And so in a field of being an educator, it seems incredibly important to look in that territory of what are the conditions that allow learning to happen, and really being clear that learning happens inside the other person. You cannot force learning. You can only create the conditions so that someone inside them has enough curiosity, enough interest. They have to want to throw the ball. Like, that wanting is so important. So the system is open for the information, the error feedback, error in the best way. It's so huge to be able to detect that, so that the system can adjust, prune, and make the pathways to make that happen. And so inside of Wholeness in Motion, when you hear me often asking you, and how is that for you? Where does that make sense for you? How might you apply that? It's because whatever I'm offering you in the throwing of the ball, for you to learn curiosity, interest, desire is an underpinning of that. And then for you to experiment and explore and get really comfortable for going, no, it's not this, no, it's not this, it's not that. As my mentor, Leon Thurman, says, that I'm really comfortable with target practice. I'm off target, I'm off target, I'm off target, I'm off target. That lets me know what is the target. And then I get that joy. It's much more pleasant when I get the target I want. But in order to get the target I want, I have to go off target. And so a very conscious and kind of important territory here is that the dominant education system that I certainly grew up with had a lot of assessment of mistake or error as something of failure and bad and negative. In fact, creates an incredible amount of fear, which makes actually the ability to explore and play and get things accurate harder. So I've spent a good portion of my private practice working with people looking at how their history in relation to learning set them up for fear of so much, because we misunderstood that going off and making the mistake is actually what allows the system to get the neural network pathways that will help us more consistently get what we want. And so, and that is not the same with just saying mistakes are okay. We need to update and say, actually, you being able to feel that it isn't what you want is in fact you developing your ability to get the feedback that's useful for you to make choice. And it's not as often, it's not as pleasant as when we get exactly what we want. But if we consistently get what we want, we're no longer learning, we know it. It's in our fibers of our being. So there are many pedagogical implications of this. You know, I'm flooded with them right now, and I'll give you one or two examples. So for example, working and coaching a music educator is giving a lesson where the tendency is they hear a student sing or play and then tell the student, okay, right, let's just do that measure again. You got this and this wrong. They're giving, it's great, they are giving some error feedback, but if they could pause, because they know their job is to help the student figure out that error feedback. See, what did the student recognize was on or off target? Were they playing the music? If there's, for example, music on the page, can you tell when you're on or off, when what you played and did wasn't what was on the page? It was a creative version. And then what would you like to do? Let's go back and give it another go. And how many goes round will we need to go with an open, easy thing of there it is, closer and closer, farther away, closer, until you're learning it. And sometimes we do break things into smaller parts, but it's completely different atmosphere if I know it's like I have to give my system time to figure that out. I might not have enough breath for that phrase the first time or the first 10 times because it's a new one. My system hasn't figured out. The common trouble in a lot of pedagogy is as soon as it's off target, we go in and manipulate and try to make corrections and fix something, and that often just creates eventually a whole identity where somebody thinks they don't have enough air. They don't know how to have air for the end of a phrase. And it's simply because one time that got turned into a problem. And so one of the things you'll hear a lot is give it another go, or let's see how it goes. Can you tell how if that's more closer or further from what you want? And there's so much here. I could go on because I love this territory because it shifts someone who was afraid to learn, who had tension around learning, into someone who is insatiable and wants to go to the practice room and wants to the joy of the actual discovery process is inside of the able to detect which direction they're going. And I'm not saying in certain kinds of skill acquisition there isn't some tedium. We're not saying that, or just precision or discipline or whatever, but it's completely different atmosphere. If we begin to understand that we are innately learning creatures, if there is one thing that the human system is, it's a learning creature. It's got some stuff in its DNA and in its evolutionary stuff, and at the same time, it's a teacher. It's a system that can teach itself. You have to oppress someone to keep them from learning. So just note your reaction to the word learning. And as in this work, I've seen it in myself and others, it's like it's what gives energy. It ignites the day. So there we go. Learning in so many different ways. We are an adaptive being, and I hope you can enjoy your adaptive learning being and enter WIM with us, because we'll give you an atmosphere where not knowing is exciting, where being, quote, inaccurate is like, oh my gosh, now I know, I can only know I'm inaccurate when I've actually already know what's accurate. And that means I've got something more accurate, which suddenly it blossoms a whole new vista of the universe when I've updated my understanding. So come along for the ride, and thank you.